Welcome back to another edition of The Rest is Entertainment Questions episode.
The Rest is Entertainment Questions episode.
It's traditional for me to absolutely monster this introduction.
Welcome, and you are?
I'm Marina.
There we go. I'm Richard Osman. Hello. Welcome to the Questions and Answers edition.
Yeah, I'm now going to try and professionally answer some questions. I'm going to start after that amazingly theatrical display with.
But listen, people wouldn't like it if it was too slick.
Oh yeah, I mean that is authentic.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe the prize commodity is. Now Sam Noble writes, with the news that the wonderful Inside Number 9, yes, I agree with you, Sam, is moving to the West End, as writers, how difficult is it to move a TV show, book, play, film, etc. into another medium? Should we focus on theatre because that's what Inside Number 9 are doing?
Yes, which we spoke a tiny bit about it, didn't we? What you did it as a recommendation. And I can't wait. I mean, that's going to work absolutely perfectly.
I have literally already bought tickets. It will be incredible. Yeah, that will work amazingly. And many of them almost have that. In fact, they have done a live, they did a live version on TV, which I always love those kind of absolute high-wire acts of trying to do the whole thing on TV. But I believe someone else is doing an adaptation or a skew on.
Yes, yeah, we're going to do. Well, we started working on a Thursday Murder Club adaptation for the theatre, and so yes, it's a good question, and I think the question about whether you can adapt things. So you get something like Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which became one of the biggest grossing plays anywhere in the world, and it's that understanding, I think, of who your audience is. So there's a visual thing, which is, you're stuck on a stage. There's the idea, of course, in a theatre production that you can't suddenly go from a living room to a car chase to a helicopter chase to a graveside. You have to cut your cloth accordingly. But I think for most creatives, I think actually they rather enjoy that. Now, Inside Number 9 is interesting because they do lots of what we would call bottle episodes. Yeah. And a bottle episode is you just got your two main cast members on one set. The one from last week on Inside Number 9 was a bottle episode. Yeah. It's essentially just set in one house and just Reese and Steve.
Well, the first episode was set in one tube carriage.
Yes. So they're very, very used to that. So they have a stage that they can use. But also, they're such geniuses, those two.
They'll subvert it and do all sorts of weird things that you're totally not expecting.
Well, that's the thing. I think as soon as you go into another medium, if you do Thursday Murder Club as a book, okay, I understand what it is to be a reader, or you'll listen to it on audiobook. I understand the intimacy of that. I understand that you can go back and recheck things. I understand that you can put it down and pick it up again the next day. You understand how somebody reads. In the same way that if you're making a quiz show on TV, you understand that people are sitting at home with their family. They're not always concentrating the whole time, but if they are, they want to interact. They want to talk to their family about what they're seeing. They want to answer questions. So you understand exactly why and how somebody is consuming what it is that you're doing. And in the theatre, again, it's that idea of you have to get inside the feeling of somebody who's come down to London or to a regional theatre on the train, who's had a bit of dinner beforehand, who is now sitting and there's going, someone a bit too taller than them in front of them. But just that excitement.
You are putting on a show, quite literally. It's an event. It's much more of an event. And
so the second you understand that you start thinking about your raw material, if it's Inside Number 9 or if it's Thursday Murder Club, you start thinking about it in those terms. Is how do people want to see that? What's the first image they need to see? What feeling do they want? And for most creators, I think most writers, that is not something that frightens them, that's something that excites them.
Yeah.
That's an incredibly, if you've got something, I'll just talk about Thursday Murder Club because I can think about it from my own experience. I know what the material is. I know who the characters are. The idea,
but it's a different version of it. That's the fun.
Yeah, exactly. And so the adaptation has to go through the lens of being in the theatre. Lots of smaller things. It has to be an hour first half. There has to be an interval because that's how theatres pay for things. And then there has to be a slightly shorter second half. But, that's not a million miles different to a movie. It's very different to a book. But I think by and large, when you adapt things and change them into a different medium, the technical thing is interesting, but there's a million great theatre producers. And I'm doing the Thursday Murder Club adaptation with a brilliant writer called Tom Basden.
He's fantastic. He did such a great version. He rewrote Dario Fo's Accidental Death of an Anarchist, which I saw last year, I think, and
Yeah.
that was brilliant.
Amazing, and just full of actual proper
So
laughs.
funny. I mean, so funny.
Not just theatre laughs, but actual laughs.
Yeah.
Which is why I approached Tom and said, would he be interested? Because I loved that so much. So you have people who know what they're doing and directors who know what they're doing. But honestly, I think the key, and Inside Number 9 will do this brilliantly, is understanding you have a live audience and it's
totally different.
There's an electricity and there's a crackle.
I should say that every contract I've signed, every TV contract, at the end, it takes so long you've way long ago started writing, by the way, before you ever get these deals signed, and that's completely normal. But there is always a long period where you're like, what if this becomes a stage musical? And you're always thinking, okay, this is never going to become a play or a stage musical, but lots of things actually do.
Yeah.
All sorts of things that you might not expect. So it is...
Bake Off.
Yeah, Bake Off.
They did a musical of.
Yes, it's worth going all the way down to the bottom of the contract and making sure, because it will look after you if it does become.
It's interesting on the Thursday Murder Club one, exactly that contract thing, and because we're doing the movie with Amblin, which is Steven Spielberg's company, and then we started talking about doing a theatre adaptation a bit after that. And if you buy the movie rights, you have certain other rights as well. And so they were saying, well, look, if you are going to do a theatre production, then I'm afraid we're going to have to put our foot down and say that Amblin and Steven Spielberg have to be involved. And we're like, yeah, that's listen, we're not going to play hardball. If Steven Spielberg wants to put some money into this,
he wants to be involved, does he? Okay,
he is very, very welcome. So that's at very, very early stages. Me and Tom are just sitting down and thinking about it and talking about it at the moment. So more on that kind of next year, I suspect. But in general, the idea that as we're talking about the boys from Inside Number 9, the insane amount of work they put into that program and the insane amount of imagination they put into that program and the difficulty of filming, the idea that they could put together a stage show which could then run for the next 10 years and delight people everywhere and bring them, money as well for the next 10 years, I think is great. But just the idea of entertaining a live audience for a writer, I think, is very, very exciting.
Yes, and others have crossed the other way. The Goes Wrong show, which with the play that goes wrong, which was very successful, and they've had all sorts of spin-offs, and they're sort of great guys. And they then took it to TV, and they had 2 seasons with the BBC, which was sort of hilarious because the whole point of it's so low budget. Yeah. When they first started, I think they actually started in a kind of maybe a theatre above a pub, and then it ended up going to West End, and it was hugely popular. Forever, yeah. And then, but when it was on TV, they actually had some of the sets were hilarious because they had thought, what, we can have this, we can have some money, we can have a tiny courtroom, an absolutely tiny courtroom that no one can get in. Yes, we'll have that, please. And it was really, but again, you had to think completely differently. And they did have a TV studio audience, but that again is a slightly different thing. And they had to sort of bring that in and make that part of the narrative of the story, because it didn't work really. Somehow it didn't work on TV unless you saw that there were people there watching things go wrong. Yeah, you needed to see people being there watching things go wrong, or it didn't work.
And that's the thing, because that's why it's such a good question, Sam, because you immediately go, well, why don't we just film the theatre thing and just put that on TV? And the thing is, you can't, because that's not, people are watching these things in different ways, and people are feeling them emotionally in different ways, and you very, very quickly work out that the medium is incredibly important and that you can have fun with the medium and change things around. I haven't seen the Stranger Things play yet, which is supposed to be terrific.
Yeah, I really want to see that. I haven't seen it.
But again, you can imagine the kind of issues you have with turning something like Stranger Things into a play, and apparently they've done it in an absolutely brilliant way.
And obviously the Cursed Child has been hugely just a sort of mega hit. And
again, that's the idea of saying, well, do you adapt the book or do you do something entirely new? Which they do, and you bring in someone like Jack Thorne, who's an absolute
and John Tiffany,
genius, and John Tiffany, and you cut your cloth according to what you're doing. I think, it's you have to look at all these mediums as completely different things. Movie is entirely different to the book. Theatre is entirely different to the movie. And when we eventually do Thursday Murder Club, the musical, that'll be different too.
The endless murderverse.
The endless murderverse. Trademark. Here's a question for you, Marina, from Don Ferris. We've got a very similar question from Jordan Rodway, actually. So Jordan Rodway and Don Ferris. Okay, we've got a dual question. Ferris and Rodway. They were like the Holland Dozier Holland of the 70s, weren't they? A lot of Motown hits.
Yes. Or
Ferris
maybe they're like buddy cops. Ferris and Rodway.
You know what? At the start, you think they're not going to get along.
Yeah, but
And at the end, they save
funnily
each
enough,
other.
yeah.
Ferris has just had enough of Rodway's nonsense, hasn't he, at the beginning? Because Rodway doesn't play by the rules.
No, he doesn't.
I wish that he would. And Ferris, he likes to please the DA. But oh my God, he's an absolute
They're
liability.
going to get their asses busted all the way back down to traffic duty.
Yeah, exactly. And after everything that Ferris has done. Anyway, Rodway.
Right.
So this is Ferris's version of the question, much more straight-laced. Rodway's version of the question is like crazy. It's like Super Mario. And he's got 2 guns in his hand as he's asking. But this is Ferris's version of the question. He's going to have to turn in
both guns and both badges.
Ferris says, "Sir, respectfully." He doesn't say that at all. Don says, when a movie shows a photograph of someone who is not in the movie, does that person get paid? I saw a trailer recently for the new Exorcist movie. There was a photograph of Linda Blair. Would she get paid?
This is really nothing to
brackets, by the way, the DA is really busting my ass on this one.
Okay. The short answer, and also to Jordan's question, is that it depends on the contract. But if they haven't got and quite often they don't have the contract properly sort of nailed down, you can use a still from a film. And so if they manage to, you own, basically what you do is you own the rights to the character and past, say, episodes or whatever. So if they've got a still from the, I imagine if you're using a picture of Linda Blair, it's not necessarily one of her with her head spinning around or whatever. So if you're trying to just do it's a sad family album thing, then you might have to pay her again. And the Screen Actors Guild will certainly try and get you paid. There was a thing in the Grey's Anatomy where there was this guy, Isaiah Washington, who's in the early series, and he was fired for being homophobic to another cast member. And then they showed, in order to sort of explain what had happened to the character, they showed a picture of him in a local newspaper saying he'd won a prestigious Surgeon's Award and therefore had to go away and be homophobic somewhere else. That wasn't actually the news story, but he'd won the prestigious Surgeon's Award, and I think he sued them. And I don't know whether he might, if his contract hadn't been nailed down, if they'd used a still from the show or anything that had been pictured in the show, they would have got away with that. Yeah. But equally, they don't always do that. Now, this also becomes, even in any image of anyone and because now people freeze frame on something I worked on. They wanted a sort of almost like a pub scene, but it was just going to be playing in the background on someone's phone. And someone just said, I could just take my iPhone into a pub and just, and the executive producer's like, no. Unless you're getting the back of everyone's head, if one person sees their face on that, because now people freeze frame on everything, and then they're like, "Hi, can you please pay me for being in the show?" Even if it's just on a sort of, you can't do. You have to be so careful because of freeze framing. It's a big thing. God, on the thing I've been working on recently, an actor was just going to be waving a bit of script around, and me and my friend wrote 2 pages of script just in case anyone actually. No,
so it was But it's true. There's a brilliant Adam Hurrey on Twitter who does football cliches. Yeah, he's incredibly great. If there's ever footage of a football match in the background of a thing, which sometimes there are, and by the way, you'll always get the cheap. It'll be something from a library somewhere. It won't be like Man City winning the Champions League, right? It won't be Man City winning the league. It'll be some sort of obscure match from 1991, and he sort of goes into the footage, finds out what he goes. Oh, this is like England under 17s against Chile under 17s in the Toulon tournament in 1983. So cool. Just by looking at the kind of the kit and the badges and stuff like that. So if you can freeze frame. If you can freeze frame, you will. Yeah, there's a story, Jonah Hill in 22 Jump Street. They need an old picture of him, which you often see in shows, which is old pictures of you. And he had a picture from his high school graduation, and they said they were shooting it and using it. And they go, "Oh, hold on, do we definitely have the rights to this picture?" And he goes, "Yeah, well, it's my mum's picture. She's paid for it." And they go, "Yeah, but she doesn't own the rights to the picture. The rights are owned by the guy who shot your high school." And so suddenly they have to go and find the guy who shot Jonah Hill's high school photograph and get the rights off him.
You can see why. What happens often on productions is that they will get people in to be, and they'll pay you to be in a photograph, because otherwise it just becomes this huge can of worms.
Yeah, and also, rightly so, if you take a photograph, it belongs to you and you should get paid for it. And that's the idea. If ever, if I'm the one show and they need a picture of you as a kid, they literally have to email your mum, so they don't email my mum and say, can we use this? And you have to waive all rights for what. And she's like, oh,
Yeah.
of course I'll waive all rights. But if it's taken
Why
by
doesn't she play hardball with the one show? I would love it if she
it's a
did.
really good idea, isn't it?
Tell her next time. Give her a script.
Yeah, and then I go,
This is how you do it.
yeah, and they'll say, do you know what? Your Auntie Jan has used one of hers, and she undercut you. So I'm afraid you lost your money. But it's photographers, especially these days, it's a precarious industry, and people will often use pictures from photo shoots on their Instagram or stuff like that, or sometimes they use it on publicity materials. And the photographers quite rightly saying it's mine. I'm so sorry. That literally
It's my livelihood.
belongs to me. Exactly. So you must always, if someone's taken a photograph, those people must get paid for it. But yeah, anything that's even a tiny bit in the background, a snippet of music, a snippet of television, whatever it is, someone has got permission for that. Often they've had to pay for permission for it as well. But there is nothing that appears on screen that a lawyer hasn't said, do you definitely own the rights to show this?
And if they haven't, then that lawyer's in a lot of trouble. If there's things like if you say a line from a song, it's all right. But if you sing it, it can cost just really quickly $50,000.
Yeah.
Just to sing one line from a chorus that someone might be using in a line of dialogue. If you say it without the intonation of the singer and without the specific emphasis, then okay, you might just get away with it. But otherwise, you're paying $50,000 at least.
Yeah, same on House of Games. So obviously, if you have a question about a song, if the song's about the final countdown, then someone might sing the final countdown as their answer, and you go, we just might have to get you just to say it's the final countdown because otherwise it's going to cost us
more than the show.
Yes, literally more than the show. Which again is fair enough. It's
don't take Europe's money off them. No, let them
they make
have
so
that.
little money from the final countdown.
Yeah, they've barely scratched anything together from it.
So if we were to start singing the final countdown now, it would genuinely cost Goalhanger an absolute fortune.
They'd be furious.
Yeah,
I imagine we'd be paying.
It's worth thinking about.
Did you? I think you'd have actually just sung a little bit of it.
I don't think I sang a little. I think I intoned it.
That's
but
better.
Even if people at home, can you just for the next 3 seconds sing the final countdown for us, starting now?
Thank you.
Yes, that was great.
You've got one over on Europe.
Yeah, unlucky Europe. I hope that now that our listeners are not sent a bill by Europe's solicitors.
For singing it in their own houses.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay, that would be
Could happen. If that happens, we will fight for you.
Will we?
I will.
Can we not take?
I'm taking on Europe.
I will personally go to court for
Listen,
people's right to sing the final countdown on their own in their own house.
I've taken on Europe before. I'll do it again.
Here is one from Andrew Day. Richard, is there a difference between reading for and auditioning for a part?
There isn't, but both of those things are. It's an interesting world. As the husband of an actor, it's the whole world of auditioning is absolutely insane. I mean, all actors do it, and it's an uncomfortable place to be, of course. And it used to be that you would go to a rehearsal room somewhere in London and, 10 actors would come in and the director would be sitting there, the casting director as well.
This is what people imagine auditions are like.
Yes, exactly.
If you've ever seen one on TV, this is what you think an audition is.
You'll walk in, you've learnt your lines, the people will be sitting there, go, okay, and you'll go through it once, and then the director will say, oh, maybe we'll try it like this, and, you do that.
What a period piece.
What a period piece, because now almost all auditions are what they call self-tapes. So it's saying to actors, in the old days, you could come into a room, you could get some eye contact, you could chat away, you could show a bit of your personality, you do a read, the director can then say, oh, why don't you try it like this? So you could do another read, you can show what you've got. Now, you are responsible for filming yourself, for lighting yourself, for editing yourself. You don't really get to do a second take where the director says, oh, that's interesting. We thought maybe we could do it a bit more with lightness of touch, and then you show what you can do. You have to work out what's the take that's best going to represent me here. So you have to do that. You have to find someone to read in with you. So in a scene, it's almost always a two-hander. And if you're in a room, the director or the casting director more often will read in the other lines and you'll react off them. So you have to find someone who reads in. So I always read in with Ingrid, and I do the other parts. And
I love that you do that.
I get into it.
Somebody was telling me once about hearing Joe Alwyn, the actor, read and thinking, I know it was Taylor doing the other Taylor Swift when they were going out with each other. I know it was her doing the thing. She's off camera, but I know it was her doing the...
That's cool. Sometimes Ingrid will say to me, you don't have to do the accent. You can be. You're supposed to be quite monotone as the
But
reading.
we always want your American accent in anything. So I hope if there's anything American, I hope we hear you.
For sure. And so so everything is now on the actor. Everything is now on the actor, and of course also because everything is on the actor, they can now audition 40 people instead of 10 people, and there's various filters they go through, and a lot of actors are thinking, I don't think the director's even seeing this. So you're putting yourself through all of this, which is hard to do.
Yeah, there's an agent actually told me quite recently that they think it's becoming really some unscrupulous agents when their clients are saying, sorry, why didn't I read for that? I would have been great for that. Why didn't I read? So they know that their clients are going to say that, so they get them to do these self-tapes, and then it never. Yeah, this is now becoming a sort of thing that some people think others are doing. So you can say, well, you did do it, but you didn't get it, and in fact, they didn't do it at all. And obviously, I'm not saying that that's an industry standard, not remotely, but that is happening.
Wow.
And then there are some people for whom you would have something called offer only, where they don't have to do this.
Which is like Tom Cruise. But, it's funny. We had Phil Daniels on a show the other day, and I was talking to Phil Daniels, and I was saying, surely you're not doing self-tapes. I mean, you either know what Phil Daniels does, or you don't, right? And Neil Morrissey was like, but they self-tape for stuff, and they send this stuff off and they don't hear, just big names self-taping, editing themselves, sending it off.
And by the way, you've got to learn all the lines.
Yeah,
you've got to. It's all got to be, and you might do so many of these, as you say, because it's made it so much easier. People do many more than they would have done in terms of the old style of auditions, and so you've really got to learn quite a lot. And it's all monologues almost, because they want you just to see as much as what they don't really want to. No offense to you, Richard, but they don't. They're not auditioning you, so they want to hear what Ingrid is doing. So they do.
Do they?
Do they?
Yeah.
Well, if you'd only creep out from behind the camera.
I often, whenever she gets a part, I always go, and what did they think of the air traffic controller in the background? Were they interested in that? I think that actors are rightly. I think it's psychologically quite a difficult thing to do, and technically a difficult thing to do. So I think actors are fighting back against it, and equity are as well. And I absolutely get, by the way, why casting directors do it, why directors do it.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense economically, and it makes a lot of sense. But I think that it's changing a little bit, and Ingrid especially is back in rooms a bit more now. And then it's just easier to get the part, because acting is reacting, acting is being in a room with someone, acting is talking, and so I think it's changing a bit. But certainly, I think if you talk to most actors, what's the worst part of their job? Auditioning's always been the worst part of the job, but we all do job interviews. Yeah. That's hard, but having to literally do that to yourself all the time in what's supposed to be a creative endeavour, I think has been very, very difficult for people.
Now, this has come to me on Twitter, but actually a lot of people asked me this recently, so I'm just going to read it out. Anna G said, absolutely baffling how there have been so many technological advances in the last 50 years. The stuff the human race has invented is incredible. Why are satellite delays for live broadcasts painfully slow? This is a question that a lot of people ask, and it's been a big problem in things like sport with gambling and things like that, because obviously if you can bet on, I don't know, corners or things like that, then the time matters. Now, latency is the official term for this is called latency. Latency is the difference between something happening and you seeing that thing happening on screen.
Okay.
And the latency is almost nothing on the old TV signal that came through aerial or on like analog FM radio. But when it's on streaming, everything is broken up into chunks, and they're in like, this is so technical. Most streams are in like 10-second chunks, and the streamer needs 3 of those chunks to start, because it needs one of those has to be starting play, so that's a 30-second delay right there. And then sometimes if it needs transcoding, this is adding to it. Or this is what people find it very annoying in things like Eurovision or anything where they wanted to like watch the TV and listen to the radio commentary, which is what some people still like to do.
Or read on online comments at the same time.
And they just can't feel that they can't. So in a lot of in a second screen world where people want to be doing another thing at the same time, this is quite annoying. But it sometimes has to go all the way up to the satellite, which is 25,000 miles, and then come all the way back down. If it's doing it in a broadcast truck, it would. And the people are saying, well, what about Zoom? Because there's no delay on my Zoom call. It's like, yeah, but you don't want to watch TV at Zoom quality. Okay, that's shit. Zoom is appalling. And
it's good for what it does.
It's good for what it does. People who accept lower latency.
We're not anti-Zoom.
No, I'm not anti-Zoom. It's not sponsored.
This is not an anti-Zoom rant.
But if you wanted to sponsor, you could. And yes, but so people will accept lower latency in something like video calls, because you don't really care about the quality. and in my case, I would like it to look very, very jerky, and so you can hardly see me in shot, or else be shot on a $70 million lighting budget, neither of which are apparently possible.
One or the other, because you get that thing, don't you, sometimes like during a World Cup when if people in the house next to you or the flat below you have a different stream to you, like a lower latency stream, you hear them cheering a goal.
It's
like
so
5 seconds
annoying.
Before it happens on you, you're like, oh no.
I'm not saying the old way is the best, but if you do actually want no latency, getting it through your TV aerial or analog radio.
So is that the thing? So literally the lowest latency you can get is
it's almost nothing
telly.
on those things, but it's because of they need to be, because it's broken up into these chunks. They need like one on waiting, and one. Then it's always going to be behind for streaming, and streaming is always and sometimes really quite significantly behind.
Streaming puts the late into latency.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I've noticed on football recently. So you can be a couple of minutes behind.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely crazy for
and
live.
If anyone else is watching any other way, as you say, it is incredibly annoying. And also, because so many people now want to follow along on Twitter or do all sorts of things that they might want to do, it gets in the way of that. And obviously, many people wish to gamble. So,
how do we fix it?
Well, I think they're just going to have to make the technology quicker to do. They'll have to make the streaming quicker.
That's such a good idea. Why don't
otherwise they just reinvent the TV aerial, and we can go back to those.
Okay. But we must, between us, we must be able to get those chunks. But I mean,
You're always trying to get us to invent something in the show. Last week, it was a conversion device for using the gym to power the national grid.
Oh, I did that, by the way.
Oh, you did. Oh, you did it.
Yeah,
Great.
I did.
Well, if you could just bring it in next week and we'll have a look.
And this one is to get rid of latency.
Just to fix streaming latency. Okay.
I'm seeing a grey silver box with lights flashing, and then you plug it into, because there's a whole bunch of things at the back of your telly, and there's always one free. Just plug it into that. Goodbye, and what do I call it? I call it goodbye latency.
Well, bring it in next week, and we'll take a look at what you've come up with.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say we're recording this.
We're recording this in 1986, so
we are. Yeah,
it may look a little
latency.
retro when we bring it in.
Yeah, exactly. Which reminds me, I have not done my French homework.
This is a good one from Roz Clark about book genres. I've often heard it said that in the US, romance fiction makes up about 50% of the publishing industry, but in the UK, romance doesn't even exist as a genre in its own right. Is that true? But gets lumped in with chick lit or women's fiction. How does mystery match up to thriller or science fiction to fantasy?
Well, the basic answer, I mean, romance, whatever label you want to put it under, is absolutely huge in the US and the UK, and it's got bigger and bigger in the last few years, and romantasy, and
which we talked about,
all that kind of stuff, and Colleen Hoover. But the biggest genre in the US and the UK is crime, mystery, and thriller. That's where, which makes up about 25% of the market. And that's the last figures. I think we're still just waiting on last year's figures still to come out. But 2022, so crime and thriller is the biggest market. Thank you, everybody.
I was about to say, I can't believe you find yourself in there.
Yes, and then romance is just behind, and literary fiction is a really a very, very small fraction of the book market. Without those two, great kind of drivers, which are crime, thriller, and romance, then bookshops would be in a lot of trouble. Of course, you've got non-fiction as an entirely different world. But yeah, those two genres are huge. Sci-fi is very, very big. Sci-fi and fantasy. I say, and a lot of that has started crossing over with romance, which is why it's quite hard to really
categorize them.
Exactly, and there's a lot of sci-fi crime things as well. But yeah, if you took out genre fiction, as they like to call it, there would not be a particularly big book trade left. But yeah,
is genre fiction everything that isn't literary fiction?
Yes. So genre fiction is the stuff you can be sniffy about and say, oh, it's a crime thing, isn't it? Oh, it's an airport thriller.
Just keeping the lights on. Don't worry about it. Just keeping the industry's lights on.
All we're doing is just entertaining people. I'm so sorry. Just giving people something they want to read. Ooh, that's awkward. My next one is a meditation on loss. I promise you, in 15th century Prague. I promise you it is. So genre fiction, and of course, like in everything, the stuff that gets called genre fiction is some of the, Ian Rankin is a genre fiction writer and is one of the greatest authors we have. I mean, John le Carré was genre fiction. Do you know what I mean? Probably Patricia Highsmith was back in her day. But yeah, it's crime is number one, then romance, then this sort of sci-fi thing. But I think if you add sci-fi and romance together,
they're bleeding into each other.
Teaming up. Yeah, I think we'll probably overtake crime.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, but crime pays. Don't go to school, kids. Hannah Calburn has a question. Her question is, really enjoyed the chat about baby reindeer ethics. I don't understand, though, how this applies to drama shows that openly identify real people and cast them in a villainous light, e.g. Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, where various people are seen in a villainous light. Scoop the Crown, etc. Can you discuss?
It's pretty difficult. And actually, even though some people, they will have bought up a book in most cases. So say they might have bought up Alan Bates's book for the Post Office drama, but Gwyneth Hughes, the writer there, I remember thinking, God, she would have had a really tough one, because who knows? Paula Venables, who is the CEO of the Post Office, is going to appear Wednesday this week at the inquiry, and we don't know what will happen after the inquiry, but clearly any of these things could be regarded as potentially incriminating. They were fortunate with her in that she had made some committee. I'll talk about her just a little bit, because she'd made some committee appearances, so they were able to use those. And as a general rule, if it's been in a book, then it has been fact-checked and legaled.
Yeah.
And so it's in the public domain.
You're
so you can you could say to them, well, if you didn't agree with it, why didn't you see the book? But there is obviously something so much more high profile about a TV drama than there is about a book, because a lot more people are going to see it. And I was writing there's this show that I still want to do that has a lot of real people in it. And
the Chuckle Brothers story.
It would be the Chuckle Brothers. But it would be a comedy drama, and nobody in this thing that I still really want to write would be accused of being anything more than a bit of an arsehole.
Right.
But I mean, I had such long conversations with a lawyer about like how we would have to do this, and I was left in no doubt really about the scale of the task. It's doable, but it's really tricky. Something like The Crown, that's a very unique situation, because they're not going to sue. Once they open that can of worms, the royal family, they can't get into it. I'm sure they think that lots of things are complete misrepresentations, are complete fantasy, because obviously it is a drama.
So would that have been their basic starting position there? Because normally with lawyers, you say, well, look, Tom Cruise is not going to sue us, and it doesn't matter. He might do.
He might do.
But on that, they thought there is stuff here that you could get in trouble for. But
well, I think there's lots in the Crown that you could get in trouble for. But on the balance of probabilities, you have to say, is the first time the royal family ever going to sue? Is it going to be us?
Yeah.
And it hasn't been. Having said that, Netflix have been sued, and I don't know whether the person who's been identified as the real Martha, she says she is going to sue Netflix, and maybe she'll have a case. There are a lot of people suing, as we've discussed before, Inventing Anna, that one.
Yeah.
The supporting characters can end up suing. It's harder to sue in the US, but definitely for Baby Reindeer, I don't know whether she'll have a case at all. I mean, it's hard to know whether she'll, libel depends on someone having a reputation to defend, and whether or not you think that the person who's accused of being the real life Martha has a reputation to defend, I don't know. But certainly it's possible for her to bring a case. It's possible for Paula Venables, the CEO of the Post Office, to have sued ITV over how she was portrayed, and therefore they were extremely careful. And you can see, actually, if you go back, and the people who might emerge as the villains and might emerge as the real life villains out of that particular story, that you will see that they've been so careful about their public pronouncements. And if you're trying to filter the drama really through the victims of it, many of whom you will have paid for their stories.
So if we go back and watch Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, it's interesting to say that, because the feeling you get at the end is of Paula Venables as the villain of the piece. But in terms of what she's saying, everything that she's saying, there's either something she said herself, or something actually fairly non-committal in
That's
a scene,
been reported,
and actually because of what's around it, the scene before it and the scene afterwards, she's cast in that light. But actually, they're not actually saying that she did
very
something
carefully.
or say something.
It's incredibly painstaking, and the sense of the impact of some of the things you might sense, you'll feel it's through the prism of the victims.
Yeah,
and it's not a sleight of hand, because that makes it sound like a trick, and it isn't. But it's a way of telling those stories and of explaining what happened, but without actually libeling potentially. Or interfering with eventual criminal trial if there end up being any charges brought after this, which is not at all clear.
So Paula Venables is in the.
By the time this episode comes out, she will have appeared one day, and she will be appearing on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at the Post Office inquiry.
Wow, at the Palladium.
Yes, and you can watch it on YouTube. They have an excellent YouTube channel, the Post Office Inquiry, that's very easy, and it works very well, their stream.
I'm going to be disappointed when it's actually zero latency, which is for the Post Office is unusual. That's nonsense, by the way. The post office are terrific. We love the post office. That'd be fascinating. It'd be weird to see her not being played by the actor who played her
Leah
on Mr.
Williams,
Bates.
yeah.
Yeah, I would. If I was Paula Venables, I'd get Leah Williams to play me.
To go instead.
Because no one's... people go, oh, yes, it's Paula Venables, of course it is. So I think that's us done.
I think that is. Please keep sending in your questions. The rest is entertainment@gmail.com.
Yeah, but anything you want, specific shows, little TV secrets, film secrets, anything you like, or just opinions.
Yes.
Like our opinions on things.
Yes, all of them.
Because I love a list. And Marina hates a list. So if you want like top three anything, just ask. Because that would be an absolute
That'll be
dream.
forced through top threes of everything. Yeah, just
exactly.
force me to do a top three every
I say,
week.
Marina, the question's been asked.
Yeah,
sorry, a lot of people want to know
I'm duty bound to create a top three. Okay, fine.
Your favourite three cartoon mice. And we will see you all next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.